Have you ever wondered how those you follow come to power? Those you call leaders? You see them in history, sports, characters on TV, movies, and video games. They're at your schools, in your government, your job, and even your home. They are everywhere. But what gives them the right to lead? Is it from hard work and dedication? Or is it by force or fear? Do we choose them, or do they appoint themselves? Is it for the better or for the worst? In this video, you will learn the ways some of these leaders acquire leadership through exploring their sources of power. Before we talk about the sources of power, we're going to briefly define the words leader and leadership. A leader is a person who leads or commands a group, organization, or country, such as a commander, team captain, president, or king. Leadership is the action of leading a group of people or an organization. This action consists of the act of communication that modifies the attitudes and behaviors of others in order to meet shared group goals and needs. In order to be an effective leader, you must understand leadership. Leadership indicates influence. Being able to influence people is an important characteristic of a leader. But where does this influence come from? Where does this power come from? These questions lead us to exploring their sources of power, the sources that capture the different types of influences that connect leaders and their followers. The first power we will explore is legitimate power. This is one of the most popular and basic of the powers. This is how many are established as leaders. These leaders include presidents, managers, the chain of commands within the armed forces of countries, and several others. These leaders are usually appointed or elected towards their position, which usually also comes with a title. It is sometimes expected of them to call meetings, establish agendas, and coordinate tasks, but in several circumstances, they can appoint these tasks to other members of the group. A perfect example of this is the Armed Forces of the United States. There are nearly 30 ranks in each branch of the military, and in the military, most people acquire or gain much knowledge of leadership. No matter how high in rank you are, you will be following orders as often as giving them. This is one of the best examples, if not the best, of legitimate power. Next on the list is a source of a combination of powers. And what two other powers make as good a combination as reward and punishment. This power indicates that the leader can take or give things away, tangible and or intangible. These powers consist of appraisal, favoritism, undesirable assignments, taking privileges, and much more. A subpart of this power is what is known as coercion. This is something that should not be used at all, but sometimes is. Coercion is an extreme form of punishment involving threats of force to make members comply, which could lead to a rebellion among the group. For example, one of the most common forms of this type of leadership is often overlooked. Parenting. Children love to play, and usually have many sources of fun and or entertainment at their disposal. But privileges are not just given, they are earned. Let's say the children in the house do not complete their chores, and thus do not hold up their end of the bargain. In circumstances such as these, parents will usually resort to this power. All of the privileges these children were given are on the line to be taken away. This is sometimes accompanied by even more punishment, such as being grounded. They will also be required to do these chores and maybe even more, while their privileges are taken away. Have you ever heard the famous quote, "Knowledge is power"? That quote relates to our next power, expert power. A person who has this source of power usually obtains information, knowledge, and or other skills that are valuable to and can even influence the group. With this, they usually complete the critical tasks, so they are usually deemed essential to the group. This power does not guarantee that the member will be a leader of the group, but it is a stepping stone to legitimate power. For an example of this, we will look into the world of sports. The ideal leaders for most sports teams are owners and coaches, but there are others who influence the teams and even lead them. These people are usually titled team captains. They are most often the individuals with the most essential talent. You see it in almost every sport, backyard to professional, and in many places around the world. such as Bobby Clark, Peyton Manning, Michael Jordan, and many more. Some of these individuals even extend into the next source we will talk about. Another form of power is referent. With this power, an individual is generally well-respected, trusted, and/or admired. People try to copy the actions and behaviors of these types of leaders. This usually gives the leader tremendous power over people, as people usually seek their approval. Something that highly relates to this power is popularity, which leads to our example, where this power is highly recognized, in schools. Most of the power usage depends on popularity, so the cool kid is usually the one to acquire it. They influence other students through the act of peer pressure. Whatever they do, their peers may be likely to follow, even if it is a bad decision. Lastly are two other powers that are not widely known, but are relevant. These powers are referred to as information and ecological. Information power, though it sort of relates to expert, is in its own category, to where the leader has access and controls to the distribution of information. This could also be the only source of information the group gets, which forms an increased dependency on this member. A bizarre but quite impactful example of this is the Coca-Cola formula. The formula of this product was so protected that the company left India in the 1970s because the government would require them to divulge the ingredients and subsequently their power. To this date, only 2 Coke executives know the formula to the iconic soda. Ecological power is often overlooked because it is more of an indirect influence to the group members. This power is given to the individual that influences how the task has to be done, the organization of the work, and can change the physical environment of the group. Directing how the work will be done, or influencing the kind of technology used, could be the decisive factor to the group composition, morality, and relationships. This concludes our overview of the sources of power. These sources of power presented are the most prominent, and the basics you should know. In conclusion, a leader's influence does not have to consist of just one of these powers, but can be multiple of them, increasing the leader's ability to lead. But these are not the only essentials of leadership. There is still much more to learn, but today you learned one of the most important aspects, and sometimes that's all you need. To end it off, ask yourself, what is my source of power? Do I have what it takes to be a leader?